The In This League Podcast Network.
The season's over. It's time to let go of baseball. It's time to not think about prospects, right? Wrong. You are wrong, sir. Incorrect, sir. That's my Willy Wonka. No, it's the number one time to start locking in. That's exactly what you have to do because we get to go look at all the stats as a whole. We get to rewatch video. There's Arizona Fall League. There's Winter League. And we have to process what just happened in the 2021 season. And to do so, I have got two of my favorite people, prospect minds, who know how to translate it to fantasy, Eric Cross from Fantrax, and my boy, James Anderson from Rotowire. Gentlemen, how are you? Beautiful hair, beautiful beards, and then there's me. That's how I would say this is.
Great to be on with you guys. This is really cool. Thanks for setting it up.
Yeah, what's up, Eric? How we doing? I'm going to see you in a couple days. Not going to see James, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm getting all ready. Looking forward to getting out there, seeing some more baseball, and seeing everybody again after the lost year last year. So it's really excited. Thanks for having me on.
I mean, listen, baseball is always rolling. Like before we were recording, me and James kind of always have the same thing. We've been doing this for years when we do podcasts. James, and it'll be like when the season's over, we're like, oh, like kind of thank God. Like we can sit back for a minute. You feel a little bit less of the pressure, but then at the same time, it goes away pretty quick. If people are watching on the YouTube, the video of this, like I'm like flushed. I literally I did kind of run and then drive over from Surprise to jump into this interview watching games. Eric's coming out here in AFL. James is constant study. It doesn't stop, but it starts with an entire breakdown of 2021. And that's what we're going to do today. It's an end of the season draft forum, all three of us together. Sometimes I conduct these like in separate interviews, but it was super important to me to have a couple people on at the same time so we can have interconversation. You know, James, you want to interject on something with Eric, vice versa. It works across the board and really just start to piece together because there's so much that happened and there's only so much that we can do in this conversation, but we can debrief and digest a little bit of it, and that's what we're going to do. You can find James on Twitter at RealJRAnderson, Eric at EricCross04. I believe you both, and I will tell you, this is the first time I have done this. To do this show, I did finally, I mean, I do it from time to time, but I did have both of your ranks up and do nice little scan through because I don't want to like incept or take any of your ideas or anything like that. So I try not to do it in season, but out of season, I was looking so I could pick because we're going to do some debates, which is fun. I put some out on Twitter. We're going to have some other stuff going on there. So you guys both put your final ranks out. Let's start with you, James. How good and how long are you going to be able to sit on that top 400 update before it starts to get the inevitable overhaul?
So my off-season process is basically I'm writing outlooks for 2022 on roughly my top 200 prospects or so. And so each time, and like while I'm going through writing those outlooks, I'm adjusting my rankings to kind of reflect sort of my latest feelings on those guys. And then, a couple months from now, all of those little tweaks as I've been going through will all add up into like a new update. So I'm not going to be like, you're not going to see me like updating the rankings in like, early November or something like that. There'll just be a big wholesale update coming once I've kind of done enough deep dives on enough of the top guys. So, honestly, I'm not a crazy person. Like I'm really going to take advantage here of these months where I do not have to be on top of constant updates.
Yeah, well, I am a crazy person, but I also sometimes don't enjoy being the crazy person. All right, so the final one is out there, and probably expectation is probably December, January. I'd imagine you're going to have like that first big update that's out there. Eric, you did your October one. Did you walk away feeling unsettled with anything? Any guys? I mean, we're going to talk about some stuff. You're going to see guys in the AFL that will probably change your mind on some areas. But I mean, you feel pretty good walking out where you were? Because we all have some big differences. I want to point that out, which is okay, and it's a good thing. But we all have some very big divided differences on players as far as a rank goes, even though all three of us know ranks sometimes are relative. And I've pointed this out a million times. Like, I'm pretty hard about maybe my top 25, but then like 26 through 75 kind of sometimes are in the same clump of a tier. So someone being like, that guy's 68 and that guy's 27, I'll just be like, they're probably not that far off. So I don't make too much about it, but how confident do you feel ending out your season with your ranks?
Yeah. Well, first, it's funny you mentioned that about the rankings and kind of they're all clustered together. My last one, I had someone tweet at me after I tweeted it out saying, "What was the reasoning behind Francisco Alvarez dropping 4 spots?" I'm like, okay, first off, it's 4 spots, and it's like I moved 4 guys ahead. That's just kind of funny, but I feel pretty good. I don't think I ever feel like 100% great about him. There's always like I'll post them and then like I'll look again like later that day or later that week and I'll be like, oh, I should have done that or move that guy up, that guy down. But yes, as good as I can. But I'm kind of similar ballpark to James. I'm always looking, always tweaking on the back end on my spreadsheet on my computer, and I won't post any updates to the site until I'm probably mid-January is usually kind of my sweet spot for the next one, but. Definitely would be good to get some AFL, live looks next week, and that'll definitely help. But yeah, just little tweaks here and there. But full next big site update will probably be mid-January or so.
James, you and I talked about something offline that I think is interesting, and it was a really good point. I mean, it affected me a little bit in how I think about it, but I also have to push back on it mentally so I don't go too far. But you and I were talking about maybe even some philosophical changes. We're going to talk about a player that's going to come up here. It's in a debate a little bit later that you boosted really high. I would just say Aaron Ashby. Aaron Ashby is, if anybody's taking a look, you always elicit excitement, James. You always have a guy or two in some of the big updates that get people going. It was Michael Harris, which was a great call preseason, and Aaron Ashby had just a fantastic run in his early part of the season here in the majors. But you pushed him up as your number one pitching prospect. We're not talking about Ashby necessarily in this second, but you and I talked because I texted you about it. I was live on a thing, and I was like, I got to get a statement from James. But we talked about, like you were saying, you almost had a philosophical change, and like a philosophical change in how you're going to approach maybe overall prospects, but especially pitching prospects, that the value of them being in the majors is going to supersede some of the, the pretend upside value of some of those guys. So you experienced what seemed like a rank philosophical change at some point in this year. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I think the way I rank hitters hasn't changed a ton, even over the last like 3 or 4 years. But the way I rank pitchers has changed drastically over the last 3 or 4 years. And it kind of started with me just gradually like bumping, whoever my top like 3 or 4 pitchers were. Like at first it was just like, I'm probably not going to put many guys inside my top 10 anymore. Now I'm probably not going to put many guys inside my top 15 anymore. And now it's gotten to the point where I don't put many guys inside my top 25 or so. And if I do, that's a big vote of confidence. And then the more recent sort of shift, which is sort of related to this, I think, is that I really think when you're talking about pitching prospects, a guy who is big league ready, or even better yet, has been pitching in the big leagues and having success and is healthy, that's just such a safer commodity to me than a guy who's at high A or even double A. I mean, like it's so there's few things more fun like when I'm video scouting than watching, like Matthew Allen highlights last year during fall instructs. Like it was just like, oh my God, like this is so exciting. It's really hard to kind of contain how thrilled you are about the talent you're watching. But we always have to remember there's just so much that can go wrong for anyone who's, even 6 months away from the big leagues, but like 2 or 3 years away from the big leagues. If you're a pitcher, it's such a volatile player for Dynasty.
Like an interesting one. You made me think about this because I have a debate that's very like in line with what we're talking about that we're going to talk. That's in a tweet, but like a prime example, but it's a little bit lower, might be Joe Ryan versus a guy like Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe is probably 2 or 3 years away, but an incredibly unique talent with 3+ pitches, or at least plus pitches in, with a solid system of developing pitchers at least. And then you get a guy like Joe Ryan who saw some pretty, solid early success in the majors. I mean, is that like a prime example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've actually got those guys about like 10 spots apart, and I've got Joe Ryan in front. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of exactly.
I didn't even know that. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, right. Like, because Jackson Jobe, I mean, it's so, and it's kind of almost it's probably the biggest thing that's different for doing like a fantasy list and a real life list, because if you're doing a real life list and you're just grading the like how you're projecting the pitches for Jackson Jobe or whoever the young like best prep pitcher of the last draft was, like you're going to have a lot of 60s up there, and it's just going to be like, well, he has to be in this range. But for fantasy, like we don't care about like a pitcher who's 3 years away from the majors. Like you can't bank on that at all, and something could go terribly wrong when they're still like 2 years away, which adds another year of the ETA. And so it's a totally different thing when you're doing for fantasy in real life with pitchers.
And we've talked about the volatility, you know, Eric, and I know James and I have talked about it a lot. And I think you've done the same thing, where there's been a time where it's like hard to get one pitcher to crack the top 20. This is just like another version of it. Eric, I'd be curious, did any philosophical change, any comments on that also, but any philosophical changes that have taken place? And let me throw one out to you guys that I think I'm thinking about a little bit more. And you're seeing it in standard fantasy baseball, where I think the outcry of not chasing stolen bases is becoming bigger and bigger. And maybe like not to a complete fault. Like we all love 5-tool players, and that's never going to change. But the chase and the amount of people that are like, you know what, I'm not going to go high. I'm not going to chase. Mondesi burned me. Look how late I could get guys like Witt. That I wonder if that is in anybody's minds, because it is a little bit mine, going to translate to maybe a philosophical change in fantasy, that we look at stud stolen bases, but we look at the application and the value. Unfortunately, I hate to do it, but Vidal Brujan is a perfect example. Everybody would lose their mind about Vidal Brujan. Oh, he's going to steal 40 bases, and look, he's starting to show power, and he did hit, and then he fell off the damn table. So I don't know if that's necessarily a chasing speed element, but I wonder if a philosophical change is out there for anybody to maybe not go crazy about valuing insanity in speed, because like how few translate. So that's a big way of me going around saying, do you have any potential prospect changes in evaluation moving forward coming off of this year?
Yeah, and start on the pitching side, kind of similar to James, and I've been kind of dropping my top pitchers down where they are in my overall rankings. Like right now, my top two are Grayson Rodriguez and Shane Baz, and they are, I believe, 15th and 18th respectively right now in my rankings. And going into the season, or the last couple seasons, I've had a pitcher in my top 10. Whether it be Whitley a couple years ago, Mackenzie Gore the last couple of years, and
we've seen those names, by the way. I just want to point out, like, listen to those names to the point.
And those are basically the poster children for why I have bumped down pitchers overall, and especially at the top end, because we've seen how, like James pointed out, how something can go wrong at any point in time. Like we thought these guys were surefire studs, frontline arms, and then Whitley gets injured and has command issues, and Gore. We've seen what happened with Gore with his command issues over the last year or so, and no pitcher's a sure thing. Grayson Rodriguez looks like the surest thing right now to me. He's might not be a sure thing. He might flame out. We never know. So the fact that I've kind of been burned several times in the last couple of years has made me reassess how I do think about that. And then with the speed guys, yeah, if they're speed first, and then like the rest of the tools are kind of meh, like Xavier Edwards, a great hit tool, obviously, as well. But, where's the power? So he needs to have all of his good tools needs to be there at all times. For him to be a big time fantasy asset. So that's why I've dropped him down, because he's not going to provide any power, and then obviously not going to have any RBI to go along with that. So there's two categories you really don't have an impact in. So guys like that have dropped down a bit for me as well.
Yeah, it's just an interesting process across the board of you're always battling the production now versus the youth versus the system, and it's not one for one. There are so many great analysts out there that only value the production now, and guys like Preciado mean nothing to them. Edberts and Preciados, they're not going to push the bar at all. They're going to be post 100. And then there is understanding the overall valuation of prospects and trying to find the guys that will hit, that can then create further trading power and whatnot. But it's always a battle. There's always philosophical changes as we grow and play this more. I think we've all kind of moved away from pitching a little bit, and you see some of, and like James has got, I think, a hard set thing that has changed in with pitching. And I'm not necessarily against that. I think for me, tiers have changed on pitching much more dramatically. That I'm with the idea of the guys in the production now, but I don't go full in. Where I think I'm treating pitchers kind of like the top 10, like in Dynasty, it's probably gonna be impossible to get top 10 prospects from me in Dynasty, because I think, especially from 1 to 2 to 3, their valuation is so much further away from guys that are like 11 and 12. Because what's a constant prospect question we get? Would you trade, prospect that's number 18 on your list and prospect, 34? Would you trade Julio Rodriguez to get those two guys? And it's like, no, like, I'm not going to trade. Just some more added depth doesn't do it for me. And that's what I'm getting at with the pitching tiers, that I think there's a handful of guys that haven't hit the majors that are worth an exorbitant amount because of their talent level. And then there's a couple guys that are showing really good results with great stuff. And then the tiers really change. And in my mind, there's really like 6 guys, and then it really falters off. And in my mind, just letting everybody know, you've got the Shane Baws in there. And I think Ashby is probably, maybe it's 7. Ashby is right there. But then you've got the guys like Meyer, Cavalli, Kirby, Leiter, and Rodriguez. Those are the tier in my brain of pitchers that are worth superseding high production value right now. And then you move into just this big clump of like, do I need Joe Ryan or Emerson Hancock? Like, I'll take Joe Ryan if I have to. It's all good. I'll take the production now. Like, I wouldn't skip a beat if you guys get that. So off the cuff conversation about how it all changes. Let's move into, I didn't want to jump past. Were there any comments on the philosophical changes from either side?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right, good. Good. Everybody's in agreement. What a great start. What do you think, and James, we'll start with you. What do you think was or were your best calls from 2021? And then there's a obvious inverted follow-up that's going to happen.
Yeah. So for these questions, like, I don't feel comfortable like saying that I just nailed a call on a guy who's like still at like low A or something like that. But I think the 2 ones that jump out to me are Alek Manoah and Trevor Rogers. Obviously I had Manoah, and big leaguers, because I feel like you can kind of claim that you were correct when a guy who you had ranked higher than most people goes to the majors and has immediate success.
Yeah.
And so, I think I wish I'd had Trevor Rogers higher, but I do think I still had him probably higher than almost anyone preseason, and then was pumping him up in redraft leagues. And Manoah obviously was a guy who I kind of broke my rule for and bumped him way inside the top 20. So those guys, had excellent rookie seasons. I think they're clearly 2 of the best young pitchers in the big leagues.
Eric, same thing with you. What do you think if you were your kind of best calls of 2021 that you can you can tip your hat with?
Well, first off, I need to ask James, can I get Alek Manoah back in the 20-team dynasty where I traded him to you last spring? That was
no. That's funny. I actually traded for both Manoah and Rogers in that league preseason. I was just like, all right, what kind of Godfather offers are going to take to get both these guys?
Was there Godfather offers, or was it obtainable?
I honestly don't remember what I even got in that deal. I have to go look. I should probably know that.
I know I gave Eric some high picks in next year's first year player draft with like a couple good prospects, I think, from Manoah. And then I got Trevor Rogers for Orelvis Martinez straight up.
That's a good one.
Orelvis had a great season. I think he's super underrated, but that's a phenomenal trade. Absolutely phenomenal trade. All right, so your calls, Eric, for 2021.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to go the opposite way. And, a couple guys that I was fading before the season. And the first one, Davy Garcia, I never saw what a lot of other people saw. And I kind of went against the grain with Davey, even though some other people were like, oh, no, he's going to be fine. I just didn't see it. And I saw him live in 2019 and was just simply unimpressed. And, I tried to, maybe it was just one start, but all the video I watched that kind of backed up what I saw in that live look, and it's just fastball command not being there and inconsistency with his changeup. So, and he had an absolutely terrible season. So, got that one right, I guess, if you want to say it that way. Another guy was fading, but everyone was kind of fading him. So I wouldn't say it was just me, but Drew Waters, I didn't see the power developing to the point where I thought he'd be like an impact bat at the major league level. I was like, all right, the speed's there. I think there's enough power and enough, contact skills to be passable in the big leagues, but at the same time, then you got like Michael Harris coming up now, and I have Harris ranked that way ahead of Waters at this point. And obviously all that Atlanta already has at the major league level. So it's kind of like, where's Waters fit in to their long-term plan? So I guess that's another one I would say I got right this year.
I guess if I would pinpoint, I mean, I don't even know if they're necessarily this year, but I mean, I've annoyingly said like Jordan Walker was probably a big one. That was a big draft guy that I was big on, and Jordan really popped this year. I mean, more recent, even Robert Hassel. I think those are two guys I was pretty bullish on. I think some of my stubbornness of not going up or down has benefited me on some players. It also hurts, as of course it would. Like I got like Nick Gonzalez, which I think took a lot of different hits in different places. Like I just never let really slip, and that looks like a huge benefit right now. So some of that persistence, I suppose. So here's the inverse question, and Eric, will go to you, is where do you think your worst was or were your worst calls of the year on a player or two?
Yeah. First one that really stood out when I was looking at this, two, one hitter, one pitcher. I was way too aggressive with my Garrett Mitchell ranking. I won't go really into him. I know we're going to go into him later. But really thought I'd see the in-game power come along more than it did this year. Really still the same thing that we saw when he was coming out of UCLA, where it's like, oh, good raw power, but where's the game power? So was too aggressive there, and I adjusted that in my last couple updates. And then I had Matt Manning as my number 2 or number 3 starting pitcher, pitching prospect going into the year. Really liked what I saw when I saw him live in 2019. Plus fastball, plus curveball. Saw the command developing, the changeup developing. It was above average changeup at times. At least flashed it, and then just kind of everything that he had gained in all those areas kind of went away over the last year and a half. And didn't really see much of that because we didn't see much of him at all in 2020, and then that kind of got exasperated this year. So Mitchell and Manning, I'd say, were my two that my worst calls this year.
What do you think, James? What stands out to you?
Well, this is the perfect place for me to announce these because they were actually two guys who I picked as my two breakouts on this very podcast before the season. And on the hitting side, I picked Aaron Schunk with the.
Oh yeah, Aaron Schunk. Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he would be kind of poised to debut early next season, and instead he's 24, and I mean, he could maybe use another trip to high A. So I mean, I feel confident. Yeah. Like I feel confident, sort of beating up myself on guys who have not only fallen in my rankings, but have fallen completely off the top 400. Yeah. Which is the case with Aaron Schunk. And it's also the case with Adam Klopfenstein, pitching prospect in the Blue Jays system. Yeah. I mean, he was basically walking just as many guys as he was striking out. I mean, he had a few starts where it was just like, that was pretty good. But I mean, he just could never really get on a roll. So, I mean, those were guys that I was high enough on before the season to say that they were going to have breakout years on your podcast probably about 7 or 8 months ago, and they're both off my top 400 at this point.
Yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I don't think I ever do good in that episode, the breakout. Like we always have a couple fantastic names from all the guests that I get on, and there's like killer ones, and then every time I do it, it's like swing and a miss. Like the guys I decide to do are just trash for whatever reason.
I kind of feel the same way, and I think I think I'm getting like too cute. Like I'm
totally 100%.
Because I just don't think it's like, I feel like I'm cheating if I'm picking a guy that I'm so high on that he's like already like in my top 50 or something like that. So I'm like trying to find a guy who is further down, and I should just take the layup next year.
Next year we're taking layups 100%. Eric, do you remember who you said on the pod? I don't remember who you said.
I've been sitting here the last like 90 seconds trying to remember who I did. I rember saying Luis Medina like 3 years ago, but I can't remember who I said this year.
I think I might have said Luis Medina this year. I said Luis Medina 1 year too. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't think they ever pan out.
I think I've said Blake Walston once. I don't remember what year it was. Maybe that was my pitcher this year, Blake Walston. He did.
That's a good
okay.
One.
It was okay. Yeah. He didn't really break out, but he did decent. But yeah, I can't remember.
That's funny. I would say one of my biggest falters, again, I'd come back to my stubbornness on both. It pays off dividends on both sides. But I think there's one big one, and I'm trying to caveat it necessarily, but I think it has to do maybe with the class as well. But like my holding on to some of the young international guys was a big fail this year. Some that have completely bombed out. I mean, Eric Pena just looks wretched. And he's a nice guy too. Like I spent some time with him, and he still has like this beautiful swing, but he had like $170 or something out here. Luis Rodriguez, maybe falling into some of the international hype. And these are guys that I saw though too. Maximo Acosta, like Maximo, I don't think needs to be demolished by any means, but he's definitely not a top 100 prospect after like really, really seeing him. So I think one of the biggest focal points for me, again, is the stubbornness of sometimes not wanting to go full in. And then also it would be some of the, where I think I sometimes pride myself in being like exceptionally good on the international side and getting in front of it. I was always had, there's something specifically about that 2019 international class of like Eric Pena, and you got Luis Rodriguez. I mean, maybe they're intertwining a little bit, but you have Luis Rodriguez, you have Puasin, like that little group in there. Not a lot of payoff in there. And I think we take previous stuff, and maybe it had to do with COVID, and maybe they'll repop or something like that. But I mean, Eric Pena feels like a big one, fellas.
I was just saying the exact same thing the other day. How it's like that second tier behind Dominguez has really, they've all fallen at least probably 75 to 100 spots in my rankings, to the point where I think my second highest one out of that trio is Poisson. He's like 160-ish in my range.
I mean,
and
he almost broke records on how much he would just hit ground balls and strike out. I mean,
I think his K rate was like 48% through his first like 200 play appearances or something like that. It was definitely way above 40%. So yeah,
it was horrible. I mean, and to the point, I think we've mentioned this before, but Jason Panini had mentioned this a couple of years ago, where he was like, "Oh, Preciado looks like the best guy," and it's like, get out of here, you silly goose! Just because you work for the Twins doesn't mean you know everything. And it's like he's 100% right of that class. Like Preciado has been one of the best. It really, a lot of the international guys have struggles. I do think there's some other thing. Bayron Lora is another one of those. I do think there's something with a lot of that, but that international class burns me a little bit, and I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to still learn, but sometimes you find a couple pieces, you fall in love. Sometimes you get out there, you fall in love. That happened with Eric Pena. Seeing him in person too, fell in love, and then you just no pitch recognition whatsoever, and you struggle in a bad complex league with horrific pitching. It's gonna not do well for you. All right, who became? And we'll start with you this time, Eric. Who became your new favorite of 2021? And I will allow you to pick a couple names if you like. There's a lot of, I've done multiple episodes on the pop-up prospects, guys that really popped in. So like, Eric, you're not allowed to say Veen or Kelnick or anything like that, but you know what I mean. Like, who are you?
I can't say Kelnick.
No, you cannot say Kelnick.
That's Eric's new favorite.
Yeah, it's your new favorite, Veen. But like, new guys that in any capacity you weren't on, they jumped up. They could have been draft guys. I mean, there's so many. I feel like I can already say, if James doesn't say the guy that we're all thinking, we're all going to be disappointed. So we're going to start with you, Eric. Who is your new favorite or favorites from this year?
Yeah, so one that I wouldn't say I was low on him coming out of the draft, but I was kind of like middle of the road on him, and then now he's in my top 10. Robert Hassel. I have fallen in love with this kid's swing, the all-around offensive skill set that he shows, the developing power. I really think this kid's gonna be a stud. So but every time I adjust my rankings, it's like I bump him up more and more and more, to the point where he's now 9th overall in my rankings, ahead of some, a lot of prospects that people have ahead of him. Like I have him currently ahead of Adley Rutschman by 1 spot and Torque by 2 spots. So really got into him this year. And then there's a lot of pitchers. Really, like I wrote down 7 names, 6 of them were pitchers. I'll just say to Daniel Espino, I love that kid's stuff. Obviously, it's still raw, still only down in high A, but just every start it was like 9 Ks in 5 innings, 11 Ks in 6 innings, 8 Ks in 4 1/3. I just love the swing and miss stuff there. And then another couple from Cleveland, Org, Peyton Battenfield's a guy that I just I don't think I even had him in my top 400 entering the season, and now he's right around top 100. Maybe not the flashiest profile around, but fits that Cleveland mold quite a bit.
Indians got a couple of those guys. I fell in love.
Yeah,
with
Logan
Xavier
Allen.
Curry. Yeah, I didn't mean to
Xavier
cut you off.
Curry.
I'll let you keep going.
Yeah.
Xavier Curry was one of those guys. He has this
absolutely.
like magical delivery where it feels like he goes from one instance it's here and then the ball's out. Like it's just this like crazy like popping delivery. But yeah, go on. So you're saying Logan Allen? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's a lot of Cleveland arms and
Yeah, just Cleveland arms. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, those
anybody
are,
but Lenny Torres. Anybody when I used to like Lenny Torres. Anybody but him anymore. Lenny.
I used to like Lenny Torres a good amount too, but yeah, a lot of arms in that system. Love it.
All right, James. If you say anybody but Dustin Harris, you're kicked off the podcast.
No, I got two. I'll start with Dustin Harris, though, of course.
Okay,
I say this every time I talk about him, but the reason I have him ranked so high is just mainly the bat. I'm just in love with his hit tool and his power that he's still growing into. But I know he's stole 25 bases this year. I am not really factoring that much at all into my rankings. So I don't want people to be like, he's actually not that fast. I'm here for the bat. I'm here for what he's going to do at the plate and probably hitting high up in that lineup. I think Texas has really had a really strong year in terms of kind of changing the general kind of theme around their farm system. They've typically kind of been a letdown farm system, but they've had some breakouts. And Harris, I think he's obviously the poster child for that. And then the other guy I'll just mention is Nick York. I was really early in the year. I was really proud of myself for how high I had Blaze Jordan for first year player drafts. But then Nick York has just blown by him, and I should have been way higher on Nick York, and I'm just he's the type of guy. He's kind of like my kryptonite prospect, the bat first second baseman who's got the really strong hit tool. Those are just guys that I end up liking maybe more than I should. But the nice thing about York, and he forced his way up to high A, which I don't think anyone would have predicted coming into the year. But he's already getting to that power. So it's not a question of is the power going to catch up to the hit tool? The fact that he's already doing it as a teenager in A-ball is just really impressive.
So I mentioned also the other day, I literally was at one of the Instructs games and it was Rangers versus Padres and I got Hassel and Dustin Harris. I saw them and I was like, Hey, look at that. And Dustin Harris is a beast, by the way. He's a big, I saw him walk up and I was like, is that Dustin Harris? I'm like, he is big. He is big in person. And Robert Hassel.
What would you guess? What would you guess his height and weight are?
Let me see. If I want to say 6'3", literally 6'3", 6'4", and maybe 220. What is he listed at? I'm not looking right now. I'm gonna pull it up. Let's see how right
he's listed 6'2", 185.
No, there's no way. There's no way he's 185 anymore. He is a thick boy. He's at least 200 pounds now. And 6'2", 6'3". I'm 6'3" and a half. And it was I-ish level. I've also said, I don't know, I mentioned this, not that this matters to anybody. Breaking news, Evan Carter is not 6'4". I've been around him a couple times. I just literally saw him an hour ago. And I wasn't sure if it was him because he's rehabbing. And I was like, how tall is he? And they list him at 6'4", and I'm like, nope, he's not 6'4". He is shorter than I am. He is maybe 6'2". So these listings get weird. Dustin Harris is a much bigger dude. And Robert Hassel's not that big of a dude. One interesting note I would put on Hassel is that nobody has longer extended at bats than Robert Hassel. Every time I see him, and I've seen him through extended spring training into Instructs now, he puts on 3-minute at bats every single time I see him. He just, sometimes the results aren't there. Sometimes he grounds it into the ground and stuff. But he does not want to get fooled. He doesn't get fooled, and he extends at bats all the time. That's why I love this kid, one of the best high school hitters, and I completely agree. If I had to pick a guy, I'd say I really fell in love with Oswalt Peraza. Oswalt Peraza was someone, I just love his swing. A little smaller dude, big power. He steals some bases. Think he's 2020 infield position. I love. And he just does it every day. From a consistency standpoint, every level, every challenge, he just does it. I fell in love with Oswalt Peraza this year. Final one on the ranks, and then we're going to jump into some debates I put together, and we've even got some listener questions. And James, we're going to go to you. How has your top 10 changed? And take this wherever you want. You could talk about it from the beginning of the year. You could talk about it from how it changed a month ago to your final iteration of your top 10. But what does your top 10 look like, and how has it changed, maybe from a big player or philosophical, or however you want to approach it? What's changed in your top 10?
Yeah, so I guess thinking back to sort of where we were at the beginning of the year, the two main changes, a lot of it has really stayed eerily the same. But two pretty obvious changes. I think at the beginning of the year, I had Brendan Davis kind of in the teens, maybe like 15th, something like that. He's now third. So he joined the top 10. And then Josh Young and Marco Luciano essentially like switched spots. So like that, like I had Young probably, they didn't quite switch spots. I think I had Young in the 20s coming into the year. And now he's in the top 10. And I had Luciano in the top 10 coming into the year, and now he's in the teens. So
yeah, the same good logic. Yeah, I get it.
But 8 of the other 10 guys, I think we're pretty much all there. Like if you just throw in Wander and throw in Kelnick, like I think the other 8 that are there are basically the guys who were there to begin with. So
yeah,
it's really a lot of guys have just kind of held their spot, and part of that is CJ Abrams and Corbin Carroll got hurt, so they couldn't. There wasn't much room for them to go too far down to me, and there wasn't much room for them to go up. So you have like Torkelson and Green kind of doing what they were expected to do, Adley doing what he was expected to do, Julio and Witt doing what they were expected to do, Noelby doing what he was expected to do. So just really not much movement at all.
Interesting. I want to note this on Luciano. So I had missed an episode last week to do, and then I internally ended up doing a AFL breakdown. The episode I was going to do was going to, and I think I mentioned this maybe on that episode or wherever I mentioned it somewhere. I was going to do this like all negative episode. Like, who are the guys that disappointed? Did they disappoint? Should we be worried? That type of episode. And Luciano was at the top of the list to talk about. Now, I think there's huge pluses on him. He's young at all the levels. He can continue. He's the youngest player in the AFL. He continuously gets challenged. He hits big homers. He comes back through struggles. But I'd say the stolen bases are moving further and further away. And one thing when looking at him that was very worrisome is how he hits lefties. He hit like 200 against lefties this year. Just horrid. But he's a young kid, and that's going to, there's going to be adjustment in there. He kind of moved a little bit for me. Like, he moved down. He's one of those few guys that I actually let move down. Nothing crazy. I didn't get him into the crazy teens, but he did kind of make that fall just a little bit when you're trying to focus on the negatives. So I'm kind of there with where Luciano moved. And the other point was, if you take away the stolen bases with Luciano, him and Josh Young become much similar players. So your advantage is Josh Young is a high-end contact hitter who's closer to the majors and will be in the majors next year. So there you go. Like, I get your logic in it. And if people are trying to figure out Luciano's going to be a superstar, he can still be a star. If you take away the stolen bases, Young has as much power, maybe a little bit less if you want to like argue about it. But Young might have 30, 40 points better batting average in the middle of the order, and he's going to probably have 2 years on Luciano. So that's the argument if people don't comprehend it, where you can go with that. So I like that. Eric, what about you? How's your top 10 change? Guys that came in, major guys that fell out, philosophical difference. What does your top 10 look like now?
Yeah, I almost had an exact same movement with one player. Brendan Davis I was looking at back to my April list, was 15th, and now he's up to 4th for me now. 3 others that joined it were Veen, who was 18th preseason, Riley Green, who I had 23rd, and Robert Hassel, I had 41st. One fell out. Obviously, we had the graduation, so I had 3s. I had also had Andrew Vaughn in the 9 spot before the season, so he graduated as well. But Torque fell from 5th to 12th for me, and that's not anything necessarily negative towards Torque. I just kind of reassessed how I kind of looked at his profile and how I valued that profile, where I was like, all right, compare him to Adley Rutschman, who I had really in the 9, 10, 11 range for a while now. Like, do I like Torque more than I like Rutschman? And I think the power is maybe a slight power edge to Torque, but I think Rushman could hit 20, 30 points higher in average as well. He's a little slightly more advanced hitter. So I was like, why do I have them 5 spots apart? So I did drop Torque down. In fact, he doesn't bring any speed to the table. So what is he, a 270, 35 type of bat, which is still very valuable. But without that speed, I had dropped him down a little bit. And kind of, I used to think he was a 290 guy. Now he's more like 270 in my eyes. So made him drop down a few spots for me. Luciano did drop a little bit as well from 4th. He was peaked at 4th back in July. Now he's down to 10th. I want to drop him down even more, but I still think I didn't want to overreact too much. Maybe it's just him getting adjusted to a new level. I think if the struggles that we saw at high A for him this year continue into 2022, then he'll drop down even more for me. But those are some of my changes.
Can I ask you guys just one thing about Luciano?
Yeah.
Do you ever recall having any hitter who struck out at a 37% clip inside your top 20?
It's a good question.
I mean, Tatis was in that. What was Tatis's strikeout? Wasn't he in the 30s in the minors? I mean,
his 28 at AA scared me away, and I will never live that down.
I'm looking right now here. Let's see. Let's see. I got majors. Are you guys gonna beat me to it? Fangraphs. Where's the minor league section?
Yeah. So he peaked at 29.8 at AA in 2017.
Okay. So that was it. For some reason, I thought he was into the high 30s. I mean, okay.
I'm not saying I basically just want to say to anyone who says, "Oh man, you hate Luciano," he's probably the only hitter I've ever put in my top 20 who struck out that much at any level. So I'm giving him that much benefit of the doubt in terms of the talent by keeping him there.
Yeah, well, and a fair point, start going through, if I'm going to randomly just, pick some of these guys that are inside the top 10, and it's not remotely close. Marte, none of these other guys. As a matter of fact, we tend to see higher batting average, low strikeout guys getting more of the valuation. I think the little bit of the struggle with Luciano, for a tiny benefit of the doubt, is that he's super young. He has been he's just one of those guys that has been pushed, I think, a level ahead at every step. He's got an immense talent when you see him in person. You're going to get to see him in person. He's playing in the fall league. I've been watching him. He got bigger. He hits moonshots. His pitch recognition obviously is not great. But see, that's my point of giving you the young thing, is that Luciano, to me, is trending to, I think he is still a 30+ home run hitter. That doesn't change in my mind. The problem is he might be the Hunter Renfroe of 256. You might hit 256 with 30 something homers with, a handful of stolen bases, which makes him okay, but he's not elite. He also may not play shortstop. So the hitting versus lefties worries me. The strikeout is abysmal, but he's still super young to go crazy. But see, you're being very relative. You're not going nuts. You're not oh, piss off, Luciano. He's now 84. You move down to 17. That's reasonable. But people don't understand that, and they get all worked up about it. I still have him right at the top 10, but the strikeout thing is worrisome. I put notes on my prospect list. The hitting lefties is worrisome. He's going to get abused. And I got an anecdote for you. I can't say who the prospect is. I can't say who there's two little anecdotal things. I can't tell you guys who the prospect is. I can tell you guys off air, but I can't tell all these common listener people. But there's this prospect. I've been trying to quiz and find out what's the toughest transitional level. Is it A to AA, or is it A to advanced, or is it the A to AAA? And you could also throw in A ball to AA. And what multiple players have returned is AA is where it all is happening. AA is the biggest action issue with these guys. That is where you are getting attacked, which, okay, so there you go. That's a big adjustment period, which he hasn't even hit yet. Here's another side anecdotal thing, and this is the most interesting one. This certain prospect with his organization was told he is not allowed to swing at 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 pitches, strikes. He cannot swing at until he gets a first strike on his lead. Well, I'm telling you a little bit on his lead off at bat, his first at bat of the game. He is not allowed to swing until he's received a strike. 3 months, this organization forced him to do this, and that got in his head. And then he came off of it, and he was allowed to stop doing it, and he completely changed his game. The point of me telling you that, so again, if I kind of convoluted it, his first at bat, leading off, was not allowed to swing until he received a strike. That was a rule by the team. What my point is teams put some of these parameters sometimes on players that we don't know. We don't know what the effect is. This is the maturation process, and this is why I'm always like a little clinical about like not destroying players because of a specific thing that they're showing, because it's a process. But 37% strikeout rate is not a process. I guess that's how I would leave that. So I talked a whole lot there. Eric, you can jump in on what James was saying. 37%, top 20. We don't see a lot of it.
No, you don't. I was just going back because I have just a big spreadsheet with a bunch of tabs on it. As I was going back through like previous updates, and I found some that were like 25, 26%, but none that really kind of fit that mold of what James was mentioning. And it's a good thing to think about. At least having the back of your mind, like I'm still not gonna drop him down too far, but like I said, it is definitely something to be concerned about, to kind of keep at the forefront. Like I said, moving into next year, see if this continues. Like, all right, maybe this is more of a long-term trend, a long-term issue in the profile than just him getting adjusted to a new level and still being young for the level he's at. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Marco Luciano. James, you had a weird look on your face. Was I saying that weird? Did you understand what I was saying with some of the workshop stuff that's happening with some of these guys? Like sometimes it's not
I was trying to, in my mind, guess which player you're talking about.
Oh, you were? Yeah, I think we have a private
too.
chat. We have a private chat that you can put in. I just can't reveal who it is, but you can. I will 100% when we stop hitting record, I will tell you exactly who the player is, because I was given this. I will tell you exactly who the player is, and I'll bet you if I gave you guys 3 guesses, you might be able to get it. It's not Julio Rodriguez, though, even though, yes, I did interview him. I do want to point out one thing, is the 37% strikeout rate is from high A. So I just like a little caveat here, not that it really matters, but he played a majority of his season, Marco Luciano did, at A-ball, 70 games, where he had a 22% strikeout rate. He jumped to high A, which I still think is I still think it's the biggest jump, but I'm starting to hear that double A is just it. And he went from 22% in low A as a 19-year-old, and he struck out 37% of the time in 36 games at high A. So, it's not 37% on an entire season's worth of work. It's 37. He jumped 15% on K rate, moving to what I think is the most aggressive level. So there's my little tiny defense of Marco Luciano, which is a good one. That's a good focus. I forgot I even put a focus on Marco Luciano here, and James, you just naturally did it, and both of you guys did. So good job on that. Are you ready to debate some prospects with me?
Do it.
You got it.
Let's debate them.
The In This League Podcast Network.
All right, gentlemen, you do not have to go crazy. We don't have to go into crazy analysis. So I would love your takes on this. I put 4 out there of fun names, and I pitted them up against each other just to see, and also maybe I potentially looked at your guys' rankings to kind of pick and find ways to poke some conversation here. Number 1, and we're going to start with you, Eric. You give your side, and I will tell you, I put these polls out about like right as we started, so we've got like close to an hour's worth, and we got a few comments on it. First debate up is Jose Miranda, minor league player of the year, led minor leagues in hits, which is still like, I'm still baffled at when I look at what he did this year, as I'm trying to stall to pull it up. 184 hits and 19 more than the next guy, hit 344, 30 homers, only a handful of stolen bases, an incredible year versus someone I poked at earlier, Vidal Brujan, who Vidal Brujan was the most exciting prospect to, I would say, one of the most disappointing prospects. And I think consensus has changed pretty heavily on him. Both of these guys have moved in the wrong direction, but one still holds the name power and the other is still a big question mark. Eric Cross, Jose Miranda, or Vidal Brujan, who do you want?
This is a very interesting one because of where they started in rankings this year and just the different types of profiles that they each have. So I still have Bruhan ranked a little higher, even though this gap, every time I update my rankings, seems to get closer and closer and closer. I love Miranda. I think he could be, above average hit, above average power, kind of like, like a 275, 280, 20, 25 homer type. I don't think he's a 30 homer bat. He's more of, the line drive power. He doesn't have like the huge fly ball rate, so it's under 30% this year. And that always could change. We know that. But I just don't see like the 30 plus homer bat there. So the fact that he brings really very minimal speed, maybe he's 3-4 steal guy, but that's about it. So I still go Bruhan. I still think though, I wonder the power. I've always kind of thought, all right, the power's there. I've seen him, he's able to elevate the ball, quick bat can really impact the ball. But in the beginning of the year, he had 7 home runs in May with a 584 slug, 269 ISO, in 103 plate appearances, and then 5 the rest of the way. And he had a sub 370 slugging in 3 of the next 4 months. So it's like, where's that power? Obviously, even through his struggles, the approaches remained good, above average, at least above average contact skills, elite speed, 44 steals, only caught 8 times. So I still think that the power will be there enough for Bruhan to be that big impact overall fantasy player. So I will still lean Bruhan, though I would say Miranda might have the higher floor.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't hit a homer in July in the minor leagues, and he went July through essentially October hitting 3 home runs in that entire time.
Yeah.
And he didn't hit a homer in July. He finished the season through September, and in September he hit 192. He had 2 months this year where he hit under 200, and you're chasing those. I just never could go full in on Vidal Brujan because I've had the same question all the time, but the hit tool really fell off. So James, what do you think? Vidal Brujan, Jose Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait till hopefully like maybe June of next year when both these guys have graduated. But
especially Brujan, I want Brujan off the list.
Dude, please. I'm proud of myself for never putting him like top 10, but
never top 10 either. We're the Never Club, never top 10.
but please just graduate. And I've got him like 3 spots ahead of Miranda. They're definitely in the same tier. I worry with both guys. Is there a spot for them to play in like 80% of their team's games?
Yeah.
That's something I would consider with both those guys. I think playing time, when they get their opportunities, they're going to have to make the most of them because they're not going to get a 200 plate appearance leash as like an everyday guy if they're not performing. But I just give Brujan the very slight edge just because he does have that sort of that scarcer skill of stealing bases, like even if he's, I would say his ceiling maybe is like Whit Merrifield light.
His floor might be like Miles Straw though.
Dude, I would take if I can get Miles Straw from a guy I've got ranked in the 40s, I would take it, to be honest.
Maybe lower then. Maybe lower. My point to take. I'm with you guys on that. There's a little bit of the chase stolen base thing that doesn't leave my mind. When Vidal was a high end batting average guy, I was really in, even without the power. Like it was essentially what Xavier Edwards is right now. Like, I want the power, but if you can be a high contact guy with elite stolen bases, I can make this work. I can figure this out. But Vidal all of a sudden became a liability as far as making contact and strikeouts, and that's not going to work. I never believed he's going to be this 20 home run hitter. Like, sure, that first month it looked like he had made this change, and then it completely fell off back to his old tricks. What do you guys think the polling looks like on this, Eric, percentage-wise? Vidal Brujan, Jose Miranda, what do you think the voting poll looks like?
I'd probably say around 65-35 in favor of Brujan.
What do you think, James?
Maybe 70-30.
Eric, were you looking? Because that's exactly what it was.
65.2. Honestly was not.
65.2 to 34.8 in favor of Brujan on the current voting, which I'm not surprised about. But my defense of Miranda, which I legitimately think I could move Miranda. I want to do a deep dive on Miranda in the offseason. I was really hoping he was going to be here in the fall league. Is you just have that type of contact ability with power. Like, I don't know, man. Like, if I can get 300 with serious power and you're hitting at a decent part of the lineup, if you have a position, versus the volatility of batting average just for stolen bases, I think Miranda might be more worthwhile. It's just Vidal has the more unique category that you would like to chase. All right, number 2 on the list, and James, we are going to start with you on this. Aaron Ashby versus Grayson Rodriguez for your number 1 starting pitcher. I can't imagine which way you're going to go.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that I'm Ashby over Grayson. I've got Shane Baz as the only pitcher ahead of Ashby.
Nasty.
I just, it's I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but Ashby has an extremely high ceiling. Like I think anyone who like is sort of confused, like it's just kind of like, well, why are you so high on him? Like he has 3+ pitches. They play perfectly off each other. He's a lefty, he throws mid-90s. His command is trending up. He's maybe in the best org you could come up in for pitching development. He's got a spot next year in the rotation if he stays healthy in spring training, because I think they're going to go 6-man for most of the year. And Grayson Rodriguez has an extremely high ceiling. There's nothing I would say about Grayson Rodriguez that I wouldn't have said about Forrest Whitley like 4 years ago. It's just that there's that gap there where a lot can go wrong still. Like I can draft Aaron Ashby with confidence in redraft leagues next year. I cannot draft Grayson Rodriguez in redraft leagues unless it's like a league with a just ridiculously deep bench or something like that.
You can draft him confidence that he's rotation. Like you are convinced nothing is going to take him out of the rotation.
Oh, of course. No, there's no bullpen risk. It's just like he could get hurt before he's in the majors.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I'm just dismissive of injuries at this point. It's like all the pitchers get hurt. Like I don't even hold that against people. It's like whatever at this point. I think the real risk is being a starter. I think that ultimately and how teams are managing their starters and their pitchers, I think is the main risk. Eric, what do you think? Grayson or Ashby?
Yeah, I go Grayson here. He's my number 1 pitching prospect. Shane Baz is my number 2. But at the same time, Ashby has moved up a ton. And, to James's point about Milwaukee being, they should be considered, like everyone's like looks at Tampa Bay and Cleveland and the Dodgers. Like Milwaukee's right there. It's like, look, they just developed, like, look at the recent pitchers they developed. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta. Is Aaron Ashby the next version of those? We'll see. He definitely has to stop. I agree with a lot of what James said. But I go to Grayson Rodriguez. I saw him live about a month and a half ago, and everything that I had seen in video and had read about him, it was backed up by his start at deep arsenal, 4 pitches, all of which are 55, 3 of which are plus, above average to plus command and control as well. Really strong build. I think he can be one of those guys that, we don't have to worry about only pitching, 130, 140 innings. I think he could be one of those, maybe he's more like a 175 inning guy now instead of a 200 inning guy. With how pitching is being utilized these days, but it's really like I was trying to find something I didn't like about him, and I just can't do it right now. So I will go Grayson Rodriguez here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Someone have to tell me. I don't remember a more dominant minor league season from a pitcher in a long time from Grayson Rodriguez, just across the board from WHIP to ERA to the strikeout rates to just everything. But at the same time, like Ashby has a legit shot, I think, to be like next year's like Trevor Rogers, but maybe for like almost to every single degree where it was like, hey, Trevor Rogers was good last year, right? Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's with the Marlins. That's fun. And then all of a sudden he's just throwing strikes. He's just dominating. And if Ashby's given the opportunity, it's there. I kind of still think there's a little tiny bit that, I think what he did, he's going to get a shot and prove it, but is he guaranteed to get a long leash and everything like that? I'm just not so sure about that, but man, he was dominant this year and he could be the next Trevor Rogers. I'll go with Grayson, but I understand how close it is. Our boy Eddie Almengar jumped in and he had a comment. He said, having had the fortune to be privy to all of his MILB data, it's G-Rod, and it's not even close for me. Only guy I could confidently say has number 1 SP upside in the minors. So it's divided, but I think the conversation of these guys being there versus not there is bigger than is being given credit for, to James's credit. James, what do you think the percentage looks like on this one?
90-10 Grayson.
It's pretty close. It's 85% to 14%. So screen that for receipts, James. Screenshot that and save that for next year.
I might screenshot that tweet from Eddie.
Yeah, screenshot that. Absolutely screenshot that. The receipts, baby. We're gonna start with you on this one, Eric. Pedro Leon. This is actually you versus Eric. I literally did, or you versus James. I literally pitted you guys up against each other. Pedro Leon versus Garrett Mitchell. Who do you got, Eric?
Yeah, this one's really interesting.
Both of you be on brand.
I like both of these guys a lot, and I moved Leon up a good amount once he started taking off this year after that slow start. I still go Garrett Mitchell. I know I can, at this point, I can confidently say I'm still the highest on him. I think everybody else moved him down a lot more than I did, which is fair. Totally get it. For me, it's kind of goes along with how I value, like the tools I value more. And like, you know, I wrote down in my notes here, like each of these prospects, Leon and Mitchell, have like one question. You know, like with Mitchell, is that game power, the raw power, going to translate into games consistently? And it hasn't really yet. With Leon, you know, kind of like, all right, the power speed's there. Is the hit tool come along? And he made great strides both with contact and the approach as the months were on, and he got more used to, you know, minor league ball here in the United States. So he's definitely trending up. Mitchell's definitely trending down. Still have confidence in Mitchell. Love the skill set, love the speed. I think the hit tool is still going to be pretty solid. So I will say Mitchell, but this is one that, you know, give me a month or 2 months of next season could very well change in a hurry.
Almost got to see both these guys out here. Mitchell, for some reason, got taken off the roster, which was there. Pedro Leon is there. James, you've been a very high proponent of Pedro Leon. That's one I definitely got wrong. I had heard some stuff that I was like, and he's just trended up and up and up. Pedro Leon, Garrett Mitchell, is it even close? I don't think your ranks have these guys even close.
No, I'm quite a bit lower on Mitchell. I think the Brewers are probably going to have to overhaul his swing during the offseason.
That's something I remember, Eric, last time we were on and we talked about Mitchell. I didn't like his swing was bothering me. The hitchiness that was going on his swing.
Yeah, kind of in the hips.
Yeah, the hips and kind of just swinging across his body, almost like Luis Garcia from the Nationals. But sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I really think context is really important here with Leon. Like for him to have missed, what did he go, like 2-3 years without playing any competitive baseball, and then he just gets dropped right into Double-A, and he kept his head above water. And if you look at, obviously cherry picking, but like if you kind of ignore his first 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, he was really, really good at Double-A, and that's really impressive because it could have very easily gone the other way, like where it was just ended up being a complete lost year. I mean, we've seen guys come over from Cuba and their first year stateside, they just don't do anything, and then it takes like a while before they kind of get going. For Leon to kind of hit his stride at Double-A before the injury, I thought that was really impressive. And the thing that I love with him is just the upside. Like I definitely acknowledge the risk. Like maybe the hit tool doesn't quite get there, but he has this super pull heavy approach that will play perfectly in Houston. Like he's going to be able to do the Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve thing where he just really takes advantage of the Crawford boxes. And he's a burner. Like his reported run times, like they just seem to keep trending up over the past 6 months or so, where like when he signed, I was like, oh yeah, maybe he's like a average, above average. And then there are people like throwing out that he might be a plus runner in spring training. Like if he's got that type of speed and he can take advantage of the dimensions in Houston, I mean, he just needs to make contact at 75% clip, 78% clip, and he'll have success.
I think he's going to be one of the most fascinating players to watch here. I think at the first day, that'll be one of the games I catch. I'm very excited to see Pedro Leon because the Astros' willingness to throw him into the fire right away, spring training, had he not got hurt, I think we all agree, probably would have been at the majors this year. He probably would have been one of the opportune guys that would have thrown in because he's played shortstop and outfield. We're kind of coming down on time, so I want to burn through. What do you guys think the polling was on that? James, let's start with you. Garrett Mitchell versus Leon.
This one I think is maybe the closest one so far. I would guess like 60-40 in favor of Mitchell.
What do you think?
I was going to say like 55-45 Mitchell.
67% Garrett Mitchell. So maybe some sleep on Pedro Leon. The time to buy Pedro Leon might be before the AFL. I just want to point out to people. I mean, James has got him high, but if and when the industry does pop up, you can see the disparity might drop. I want to burn through this other one and just answer like a couple quick listener questions because we're kind of coming up to the end of this. The last one was a pitcher one. This is just a weird one. Mackenzie Gore versus Mick Abel. Mick Abel, kind of quietly okay season. I was trying to find the right guy to pit up against Gore, and I just couldn't find it, guys. I just struggled. I have said this publicly. Mackenzie Gore is a reliever to me now. It may change. Maybe a team is going to come and fix him. Cool. He had a couple starts. He's doing stuff. I just don't, after seeing him as many times as I have now from where I saw him before, he's just a different pitcher. He cannot command, continuously not command. The stuff doesn't look as good. He doesn't trust his secondaries enough. He's almost scrapped the curveball. He could get fixed. I never put it past somebody, but I think he's a reliever at this point. I'm holding out the slightest hope before I plummet him because I haven't taken him out of my top 100 to see what happens in the AFL and if he gets moved. But if I don't see the change, and I have context of seeing him through instructs through AFL, if I don't see it, I'm going to give a major, major plummet. So James, Mackenzie Gore or Mick Abel?
Yeah, I'll go Abel, but I'm sure I'm probably lower than both you guys on both of these pitchers.
Probably,
You know, Gore I kind of view as sort of just damaged goods at this point, and Abel ended the year with a shoulder injury, and I mean he's kind of a prime candidate to get hurt before he gets to the majors. So I'm not that in on either guy, but I'll take the guy who at least I feel like we can still sort of dream on him developing and ascending in Abel.
Eric, what do you think? Abel or Gore?
James said it perfectly. I go Mick Abel. I've been very high on Abel ever since last year's draft. And yeah, you can still dream on him. He's got we talk about how good Job is. I think Abel is just like that plus a year. Potential for 3+ pitches, advanced for his age. I'm not saying he's like plus command, plus control, but for relative to his age, I think he's kind of ahead of the curve in that department. So I'll go Abel. I think he's gonna be a very good starter, and Gore at this point is a giant question mark. And yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of reliever list too. So.
You know who I might take over Mackenzie Gore? I might take Ricky Vanasco, James. I just saw Vanasco throw the other day, and he was money. He looked good.
I have Vanasco ahead of Gore on my last update.
I think
James,
John.
James, where do you have Gore?
216.
Oh, you jumped in. I have him still at 106, but I'm like with Chris. I'm just waiting I'm holding on hope that he can turn it around. But 216 is fair. It really
I'm
is.
embarrassed. I still have him near the top 100, but I have him in the top 100. But I'm telling you, it's like a string is holding.
Yeah.
And I've got to see another start. And I've missed. He's had 2 instruct starts, and I missed them out there. He gave up a homer to Jose Tena. I think the plummet's about to happen with me, and it's going to happen quick. Do you guys have like 5 minutes for listener questions?
Yeah.
I know you're up against it, James. Okay. Oh, by the way, the polling. Any guess real quick?
It's probably still, I'll say 60-40 Gore.
Same.
James? You might be surprised. Only 51% Gore. Mick Abel coming up. The people are waking up on Mackenzie Gore, and the AFL, we'll see. AFL is, guess what the AFL is not? A bunch of 18-year-old instructs kids like Gore has been facing for the most part of this year. It is going to be the likes of Pedro Leones and Cespedes and Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green. Let's see how he does against those. I will have my camera ready for any Mackenzie Gore versus Spencer Torkelson or Riley Green stuff. All right, here's a couple listener questions. I dropped a perk over on the Patreon, having you guys on, and let's burn through, and I might even go 1-to-1 here. Rob asked, prospects for next year and long-term for 3 pitchers in similar spots, Roansy Contreras, Matt Brash, Luis Heil. Who is the best play for next year and the best play in the next 5 years? So let's not go too long on it, but Eric, what do you think? Luis Heil, whatever you say it. Heil, Contreras, and Brash.
I'm just trying to think which one has the better chance of sticking in the rotation. I'll probably go Contreras. I'm not saying I like him the most in general. I like Heil the most out of these 3 arms. But I do think Contreras has the best chance of kind of getting, a close to full workload next year. So I think the Yankees will always go out and sign someone, and Seattle just has a ton of options. I wonder if Brash starts back at AAA to start the year for at least a month or two to get more seasoning in. So I'll say Contreras for next year, but next 5, I'll probably go heel.
What do you think, James?
I mean, I've got Heel and Contreras back to back in my top 400. I mean, when I did the list, I had Heel ahead at 55 and Contreras at 56. Today, I kind of feel like Contreras at 55 and Heel at 56. But, Brash, I think, honestly, has the highest ceiling of the 3. But I just think the other 2 are closer to finished products.
Yeah, and I like Contreras. That was from Rob. Eric said, first-year player drafts. Do draftees coming from college make it to the show faster than draftees coming from high school? Are they better prepared for A-ball? That's one question. Well, I mean, I'm going to just answer that real quick. Like, sure. Like, I mean, you have a higher percentage of return rate, I think, from college bats. It'd be interesting to look at like the major impact, the type of player that you get back. I think you see a lot more college players, but I think that's inverse across the board. He asked another interesting question: what are the best predictive stats when you're talking at minor leaguers? He's throwing out some other stuff, like if you're looking at strikeout rate. James, do you have any predictive minor league stats that you like to focus on?
Strikeout rate, walk rate for hitters and pitchers.
Yeah, Eric, same.
Yeah, for both.
Okay. The mayor of St. Charles says, I've heard Welsh mention guys in tiers when he's doing his rankings, but when you all put together your rankings and are forced to put one player over another, like Julio at 1 and Bobby Witt at 2, which he's referring to mine, do you treat it as if you were drafting all those players today? That would be their draft order. Otherwise, does it make sense to have tier 1, tier 2, etc. versus prospect 1 through 500? Just curious at your process. Yeah, I actually, that's how I kind of approach it. I try to approach it from if I'm in this position, this is a value based on where I would go. But I will admit, when it starts to get further, I view them in tiers, and I just go, well, I like this guy a little bit better than this tier. Like, I have this system where sometimes I just need to move a guy. Like, I'll find a guy on my list, and I'm like, all right, these guys I like over him, so I'll move them up over this guy, and this guy has become this tier change, and that's how the lower can move up, and I'll kind of go through this process. So he's essentially asking, do you think it would be better to be tier-based ranking instead of numerical ranking? Eric, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I kind of see it from both sides. I do kind of look at it, initially in tiers, then within the tier, like which guy do I like more? And a great piece of advice I got back kind of when I was starting out, and this was from Chris Blessing, was talking about how he used the term putting guys in buckets, right? Like similar skill sets. Like, all right, this is the way I kind of thought about it, all right, this bucket is all right, 50 hit, 55 power, 55 speed type of guy or something like that, whatever it may be. And then once you get those kind of guys together, like, all right, then how do I view them individually, and how confident am I in them reaching their ceiling, so on and so forth. So, tiers are definitely important. I think a lot of people have been asking for tiers when I put out my rankings, and I think that definitely helps them. But then, in individual, I still think ranking numerically is important too. So yeah. I like grouping tiers first, then within the tier, like, all right, who do I like more in this tier? That's kind of how I do it.
James, can we live in a chaos world of tiers and not numbers? Can we live in that chaos?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just it'd require some programming on the back end. I mean, I try to, like, basically everything Eric said. I mean, if I'm doing an article that goes with an update, I usually try to at least say where the tiers were inside the top 150 or so. And obviously, the further you go down, the bigger those tiers get. Like, there's a tier of 2 at the top. But then, from maybe 90 to like 160, like, that's a tier. So it just, the further down you go, the bigger the tiers get. I mean, we have to rank guys. I mean, it'd be tough to use and tough for the readers and the subscribers if there weren't numbers next to each guy.
Yeah. And how could we do a list where it's like, hey, congratulations, we're about to drop our tier 1 list? Like, that doesn't, like, no one gets excited about that. Like MLB Pipeline's not going to be like, all right, it's our 13 tier, 57 player list. I mean, I will be honest with you. To give credit, Eric Longenhagen kind of does that with his future value. It's kind of in that where he doesn't do a true 100. It'll be like 137 guys or whatever it ends up being. And it's also, it's always like FV50s and up. So that is kind of tier based a little bit, but there's still a numerical number to it. I think it's just all about consumers finding ways to properly figure it out in their heads. Like maybe and that's something I will do, and maybe we'll all start to adopt identifications of tiers maybe a little bit more, but numerical will never change. And because I think we all in instances do actually, like, especially in the top 10, it's like, no, I take that guy 2, I take that 3. So James, sometimes I'll ask you a question, it'll be like, well, I got this guy ahead of that guy, so yeah, I would take him there. So that, I mean, we try the best that we possibly can on that. And friends, we're going to end there. I had a couple other questions I will answer off the sheet here. Both of you guys killed it. This is an end of season draft forum to talk about, prospect forum, just to talk about all the stuff that was going on. There's so much to debrief here. Ranks are out there for people to digest. James is out there putting together the book, the Rotowire prospect book that's going to be out. You're going to be doing tons and tons of dudes. Eric, you have the same thing with Fantrax, working on the list. I'm going through the same thing. I'm doing a lot of different note taking. So Eric, let's start with you. What's the plan for the offseason? What should people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, it's getting. I almost write and do more work in the off season than the regular season, which sounds kind of odd, but life of a prospect dynasty type of guy too. So yeah, obviously I'll be hitting the fall league next week. Really excited about that, and obviously first pitch Arizona. It's always a fun time, and just kind of diving into some players that I really didn't have a chance to really dive into as much as I wanted to this season. And then another thing too, Black Book work starting next week that Joe Pisapia puts on. So be starting to do my top 100 prospects for that as well. That's always a fun little side project to do in the off season as well. So yeah, so a lot more work to be done.
On Twitter, Eric Cross 04. James, you're gonna take a little break. You need it. You deserve it. Anything else besides the book? It's gonna be a heavy book, and people just should be subscribing to Rotowire and get ready.
Yeah, I assume you're probably dropping this podcast Friday, and I will be releasing my Dynasty rankings update, kind of the end of season 1 Friday. So be on the lookout for that. I'm doing the Rotowire podcast all through the off season, hosting that. So check that out, obviously. But yeah, subscribe to Rotowire. There's going to be a ton of prospect outlooks hitting the site before you know it.
I love you both. I love you both. You both are so great. You both.
I love you too, Chris.
I thank you. You guys both instantly say yes. I can always talk to you guys. We need more positivity and good stuff in the industry of prospects. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be rocking through all the things. This year, I think there was more negativity surrounded around people, which I think is ridiculous and silly. I've always said this. Look at fantasy like a tool belt. You don't have one tool in your tool belt, nor does one tool rule over all the others. Have plenty. Consume lots of people. Some people can go out and, James and I have stuff behind paywall. Eric, you've got stuff out there. Support the people that you like. We all do it in good, different ways, and that's why hopefully people like this show, Prospect One, because I at least can try to bring a lot of the people together. And both of you guys I thought you killed it this year, and you both spent a lot of time with me on here. So at least for the 2021 season, couldn't think of two better dudes to hang with me and bid adieu. So thank you guys both for jumping on the forum, and I look forward to bugging the crap out of you guys in the off season.
Yeah,
cool hanging, guys. Thanks, Chris.